Good morning, everyone. My name's Tim Pearse. I work as an advisor in the UK government. We make policy around social enterprise and social investment, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about what the UK does and therefore maybe what could happen in Lithuania. I've been advised that because of the simultaneous translation, I really shouldn't make any jokes because they'll be lost. So I'm going to try my absolute best, but if you see me smiling to myself, that's the reason. So just to tell you what I am going to tell you, first of all. First thing I want to say is social enterprise and social investment. Like, why should anyone care? Why does the UK government care? So first thing, make the case for it. Second thing, I want to talk about very briefly about the UK approach before 2010 and what was going on then. And then finally I want to talk about what's been going on since 2010, because there's a bit of a shift in the UK's approach. And I'll explain what exactly that means as we get onto it. So I've got some statistics here which contradict a lot of His Excellence the Ambassador's statistics, but I'm sure they're both right. They're just from slightly different sources. So first thing, why is the government interested in social enterprises? Well, they're businesses that tackle social problems. So instantly that's something the government is and should be interested in. There are 180,000 social enterprises in the UK. 15% of all small and medium enterprises are social enterprises in the UK. They contribute 55 billion to the economy. They create jobs and growth. So they employ over 2 million people in the UK and tackle disadvantage. So, for example, 39% of social enterprises work in the 20% most deprived communities in the UK. So that's social enterprise. Linked to that quite strongly is something called social investment. And social investment is like normal investment. It is capital that looks for a financial return. But social investment also looks for a social return. And sometimes, often, it is willing to have a lower financial return if there's a good social return. So it's repayable, often with interest, and it's typically used to develop existing activities that generate income. It can be in all sorts of forms, so it could be loans, equity, structured products. I mean, there's lots of different types of standard investment, and there's no reason why there can't be all different types of social investments. A final point is that it has a broad spectrum of political support in the UK. So it's not something that a particular party is interested in. It's sort of everyone's interested, and that seems to be the case in the other countries we speak to as well. So moving on to the second bit, I just want to quickly cover what was going on before 2010. The UK government's approach was basically to focus on social enterprise, and the strategy from, I think, 2006 had 4 broad objectives. So the first one was to foster a culture of social enterprise. And this was about awareness raising, getting people to, understand this stuff, know it, so that when they heard the term, it wasn't instantly sort of like, well, what is that? So that people started to get it. So one of the work strands was sort of social enterprise ambassadors, people that usually had set up social enterprise themselves to speak about this stuff and go out and communicate about this. Second, ensure the right information and advice are available to those running social enterprise. Again, so a role for government there just to provide the right sort of information, just so that if you are trying to do this, social entrepreneurship is hard. I mean, you guys know that better than me. But can government make it easier with the provision of information? So there were sort of websites and stuff set up. Thirdly, enable social enterprises to access appropriate finance. So this is the beginnings of the social investment market. How do we ensure there is capital out there for social enterprises to access, to build and grow their businesses? And then finally, enable social enterprise to work with government. So, is there, could government be acting differently when it buys services? Should government be thinking about the social impact of the goods and services it buys? And if so, how should it do that? I did not expect it to be doing that. But I'll take the credit. So finally, I'd like to talk about our approach since 2010. And as I said, there has been a bit of a shift in the way we think about this now. So it's become a focus on social investment, and that is to enable social enterprise, but it's more focused on the investment side of things to enable social enterprise rather than the direct relationship. Now, you will see that a lot of the work streams are similar, but they just have a bit more of an investment flavour. So the team I work in, the social investment and finance team, there's about 15 of us. We sit in the cabinet office, and we have three broad work streams. Firstly, to increase the supply of capital into the market. Secondly, to create an enabling environment for accessing that capital. And finally, supporting demand for capital by growing the investment pipeline. And I'm going to talk you through a few of the things that our team does on each of those things to give you a sense of what we're doing and what is possible. So, increasing the supply of capital. For each of these things, I'll list three sort of big things that we have done or are doing, and then I'll go into a bit more detail on one of them. So, first thing, we created something called Big Society Capital, which is it's a little bit like a bank, but we're not allowed to call it a bank for legal reasons. So we call it a social investment wholesaler. And what it does is it's a social investor. It has £600 million to invest. It must make a return on that money, and it must make a social return as well. Second thing, since Wednesday, we have a tax relief for social investors, and that brings tax relief for social investment in line with tax relief for standard investments. Finally, we look to promote the UK as a global hub of social investment. So we want to create infrastructure in the UK that can be used internationally, much in the same way as the City of London is a global hub of normal finance. So just to go into a bit more detail on one of those, Big Society Capital, just to give you a bit more detail on that. So we set it up in 2013. And it is independent of government. That's absolutely critical. One of the things that the government is really keen on in this space is not to become the market. That's really important. We want to do what we can to help the market, but we don't want the government to be the market or to suffocate the market, because that's not. We don't think that's particularly healthy. So what does it do? It invests directly in social finance intermediaries. So we have, let's call them banks for now. We have social banks, and what Big Society Capital does is it puts money with the private social banks who then invest it in social enterprises. As I mentioned, it has £600 million of funds. Everyone's always really interested in where that came from. Basically, what happened is we had a lot of money in what are called dormant bank accounts. So bank accounts that no one's touched for, I think, maybe 30 years. And the government took £400 million of that and gave it to Big Society Capital. Now, everyone's always really worried about that. Anyone who wants their money back, who comes back after 30 years and wants their money, can get it. So it's not just government appropriating this stuff. So that was 400 million. The other 200 million came from the UK's largest high street banks, banks like Barclays. And as a result, those mainstream banks sit on the board and the investment committees, which has added a pretty strong rigour to the investment decisions that the Big Society Capital makes. And finally, it acts as a cornerstone investor developing financial products and funds that aim to provide risk and working capital to the sector. So often it might be the first investor in, and as the first investor, it can attract other investors, and in that way it can either reduce or increase risk depending on what other investment intermediaries want to do. So, second thing that we're doing, supporting demand for capital by growing the investment pipeline. Three of the big things we're doing here is we have what's called an investment readiness programme. So we have £20 million for two different funds, which basically aim to get social enterprises ready for investment, because we have a lot of social enterprises who do great work, but they are not ready to take on investment. They don't have, the investment expertise, the accounts, the legal expertise, etc., etc. And so what these funds aim to do is offer money for those enterprises to build their capacity, so that they are then ready to take on social investment and then grow themselves. So it's only seen as a short-term measure for very small organisations who can then move to more financially stable footing. Second thing, we offer support for social impact bonds, which is a new financial product pioneered in the UK. I'll tell you a bit more about those. I'll go into a bit more detail on those in a minute. And then finally, we sort of aim to open up markets. So we think, well, what else? Which other markets are ready for social investment, stuff like that. At the moment, we're very interested in the retail market, i.e., people like you or me, not people with loads and loads of money, people with maybe a few savings. How can we get them interested in social investment? Because lots of people, when I talk to them about this, say, amazing, social investment, yeah, that sounds brilliant, I want to do that. I have £500, I'd love to do something like that. And so we're as a team thinking, well, how can we capitalise on that and get everyone involved in this? So a little bit more about social impact bonds. These are quite complicated products, and I haven't got time to explain in huge amounts of detail what they are. And I can talk more in the breakout session if that's of interest. But it's basically it's where three actors get together: the government, social investors, and social enterprises. And basically what it is the government may have an issue, a social issue, like let's say a reoffending, and the government says, basically, we're happy to pay if you can reduce the rate of reoffending. And then social investors come together with social enterprises, and they work to deliver that change. And if they are successful, the government makes a payment. If they are unsuccessful, the government does not make a payment, and the social investors lose their money. So if these things are structured correctly, everyone wins. The government gets something it wants, and if it doesn't pay. Investors get what they want. They can make social investments which can make people's lives better, and they scrutinise these deals to make sure they don't lose money. And social enterprises get to do what they want to do, which is help people in need. The UK government has set up what's called the Centre for Social Impact Bonds, basically to foster this market. We do stuff like provide information. We have set up certain funds which add small amounts of top-ups to the government funding to make this more financially viable. This is the area that I work on. So I can, anyone who's interested in this, I'm really happy to talk to all day later. So just come and grab me. Finally. Creating an enabling environment for accessing capital. And this is about, we've got the supply of money coming in, we're building the demand. This is about, what about, the environment that all this is happening in? Is there anything that we could be doing around that? And so there's a few things we've done. So as the ambassador mentioned, we've worked on commissioning for social values. So I believe it was 2012, what's called the Social Value Act came into force. And basically the issue before this was that in standard procurement, the law is that you must buy services and goods based on the ones that are most cost-effective, i.e. the cheapest. That's a little bit limited in its vision, because if there's two companies and one of them's providing huge social value alongside its goods, you're not allowed to consider them if they're slightly more expensive. So what we did is we changed the law so that if you're procuring goods and services, you are allowed to take into account the social value that is created by the company's bidding. And hence, if there is large amounts of social value being created, that can be taken into account and therefore help social enterprises become parts of procurement chains. Second thing, we develop new tools. We think about, which new tools would be good for the market, what could grow the market, what's ready for change, what's ready for innovation, what's ready for disruption. And so one of the things there we've been doing is we've been trying to get in foundations money, and we've set up something called we want to set up something called a commingling fund, which is about trying to blend foundations money with standard investment money, which prior, has not really been done, but it again offers a really interesting opportunity, because foundations have so much money and investors want to invest alongside them. So we're looking into that. And then finally, regulatory changes. So, social investment's really new, and often the law hasn't been developed with thinking about this sort of stuff. And so we try and think about, is the legal system currently stacked against social enterprise? Does it need to change to properly appreciate and value what's going on with social enterprise? So I've talked about this already, but just to get into a bit more detail. So Social Value Act, so it came into force in 2013, not 2012, like I just said. It basically enables public bodies to consider, how the services work as well as costs. So to give an example, a local authority might employ a social enterprise to do construction work. As this social enterprise employs people who have recently left prison, it has high social value, and therefore you get, what's often referred to in the sector as a double bottom line. You get, you get the profit, which is the standard bottom line, but you also get the social value, which is the second bottom line. And if you add environment in there, you can get a third bottom line as well. So that's really exciting. Just to conclude, government plays an important role, and I was trying to think about, trying to pull all that together where it adds value. So one thing is where the market is still small and nascent and growing. The government can play a big role in sort of shouting about it, making sure people know about it, seeing what can be done. It can act where there are market failures. So where in some way the normal market mechanism doesn't work properly and needs to be corrected. Thirdly, to set up infrastructure. A lot of this stuff, can be really helped if the infrastructure is there. So again, a role for government can be thinking about the environment and the environment that the social enterprises operate in. Sorry, I studied economics and I realised this is littered with economics terms. But so fourthly is to provide public goods, which are goods which should be provided by government according to economic theory. So standard things include stuff like armies and street lamps and stuff where basically it's not really worth private companies doing it. So what are the public goods in this area? And then finally, and I think this is crucial. If there's only one thing you remember about what I say today, I'd like it to be this one. And that is, it's really important to work with others. It's really important to steward the market, and it's really important not to be the market. Government should enable, but it should not be the social investment market. And so think about the other actors and make sure the government plays its role, but allows others to play their role as well. Thanks very much.